Hello, my friends, and welcome to Adobe Live. I'm your host, Kieran, a graphic designer from London, tell from the accent. And today we have an awesome session of Adobe Spotlight with the wonderful designer who goes by the name of Chris Porter. Chris, how you doing, my man?
Doing great, man. Good to see your face. It's good
Good to
to
see
good
you
to reconnect.
again. This is
Yeah,
the
man.
third time, right? Can't get rid of me, man.
Yeah. Oh, hey, look, let's do it. Let's ride or die all the time, man.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I'm gonna give some good energy today. I can feel it. So yes, my friends, this is a special stream. We got Adobe Spotlight. So today we'll be sharing some love on Chris, looking at his design background, bit of design process, and learn a bit about himself as the designer behind the work as well. And by all means, please do get your lovely comments in the Q&A in the chat, whether it's on YouTube, Behance, share it with us, and I'll make sure Chris gets it directly as well. So on a final note, remember these streams are very much designed for you guys to, level up your creative career. So any questions you want to find out from Chris about his design journey, his process, we're going to really delve in to his real, insight of to who he is and what he's about. So how does that sound to you, Chris? Sounds good?
Oh man, it sounds like a blast. Let's do it. I'm excited.
Nice, nice. And of course, silly me to show some love in the chat. I can see we've got RB, Cody, Josh, Packer, everyone in the chat. So again, send some love. Let us know where you're tuned in from. And yeah, let's just kick it and go straight into it, Chris. Um, so in terms of a little introduction, would you like to tell folks who you are and what your design background is?
Yeah, of course. So just a little bit of insight into me. I'm creative director, partner at Baby Grand. We are a full advertising firm here in Memphis, Tennessee. This is just our website here. A little bit about us. This is
Nice.
some of the team. We kind of have a new member that we need to update this photo so she gets on there. But we specialize in brand identity work and branding in
Mm,
general. And so what we do is we translate that across the board, not just in your logo design, but your brand messaging, your brand tone, positioning, and that fleshes itself out according, to whatever your business is or whatever you're doing. So we help with experience design.
mm.
So if you're hosting events, we can help you to bring some creativity into those. These are some of my lovely partners and coworkers here. Um,
Nice.
and so, yeah, like I said, we do the visuals, we do help with naming, things that a lot of
Mm,
people are probably very familiar with in chat and things that a lot of people are very passionate about. And so I'm humbled to be able to do that on a day-to-day basis. And
nice.
so that's a little bit about where I'm at and based in Memphis, Tennessee. Like I said, been here since
Okay.
college and love it. And so, yeah.
Yeah. I'm always curious about like names as well. Of like when folks think of the agent, is there like a reason why the name Baby Grand? I'm just curious if there's a story. I don't know if there's not, then it's all good. But
There
I'm
is
just curious.
it is a story, but it's not that cool.
Oh, you never
It's
know.
yeah. So, I actually used to run my own kind of practice called Creative Punch Marketing Group.
Okay.
And so it was myself and a business partner of mine, and we, brought in contractors and we leveled up from a small team while
Mm,
my now partners at Baby Grand, Ben and Dan, were doing a similar thing themselves with Baby Grand. And they came up with their name because they had decided to do this whole venture. Like, let's do this together, but we gotta come up with the name. And they were at a movie showing or film screening, and one of
mm,
the animations on the outtakes was like this really cool piano animation. And then Dan, who's our copywriter and just brilliant wordsmith,
mm.
he leaned over to Ben and was like, "What about Baby Grand?" And then they were like, "Yeah, that just sounds right." And so, we lean
Okay.
into it now, like now we have a lot of cool puns and stuff that we use for it. Um,
Nice.
and our clients always ask, like, what's the name mean? And we just say,
Mm.
well, whatever it means to you.
I like that. I like that. You're gonna giving it
Mhm.
on to them so they have their own perspective on it. Because it's a tricky one, isn't it, when you think of sometimes the name of a brand or project, because there's got a bit of sometimes a nice deeper meaning behind it, but it's a tricky one, right? Sometimes overcomplicating it is the worst thing you can do and just keep it simple and I like the
Mhm.
name, man. It's short and sweet.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things to do as a creative is have a really nice email signature, not like
Yes.
with a graphic or anything, but just a nice sign off. And so
Yeah.
when I was running Creative Punch, my signature
Mm.
was keep punching, like keep going.
Okay.
So that's was kind of like my mantra. And then
Okay.
with Baby Grand, my mantra is be grand. So that's like
Nice.
my end thing. And so I always create like merch and stuff with that, around, and I wear it around. People are like, oh, what's that? I'm like, oh, here you go. Let's talk about a little work.
I love that nice little intro. I can imagine you like dinner parties just kind of dropping that as like a little nugget of information for
Yeah.
folks to never realize.
Hmm.
So I mean, I've been a massive fan of your work. I've been, like I said, we've had what 3 or 4 sessions now of streams. So I've seen your design process. But again, for folks who are tuning in for the very first time and getting a feel for who you are, what you're about, the vibe I get from your site, there's a lot of things you cover: the branding, logo design, print design, copywriting. Would you
Hmm.
say in your day to day, there's specific roles that you really hone in on in terms of what you do as a day to day kind of process?
Yeah, very much so. I would say that a day to day for me is very much centered around visual identity work. So whether that's branding or campaign work,
Mm,
I'm really honed in on how things look and feel. And so, for instance, I think one good thing we can look at is just this website we launched the end of last year for a nonprofit here in the city called Bridges. And so something as easily understandable for everyone in chat is like working on a logo, right? We all understand kind of that process, and I can kind of talk more about my process with it. But
mm,
so I might be working on logo and identity work, or I might be in, you know, Illustrator working on graphics for a website, or in Figma doing stuff, or in, building a webflow, or
mm,
whatever it might be, in Photoshop, editing photo treatments, creating these gradients. So, for instance, with Bridges, um, I spent a lot of time mocking up just the UI and UX, and so how would this look? How will this feel? Sometimes
nice.
branding is not just, hey, let's make a pretty logo and put it on t-shirts and mock-ups, but it's about this gradient, it's about other things. And so we
Mm,
didn't actually create the new brand suite for Bridges. Like, we didn't redo the logo or create these specific color guides, but we received their brand guidelines and then we fleshed it out on a website. And so we create how the website interacts, how it feels, and update that. So that's sometimes what I'm
mm.
doing too, is taking what's already there and fleshing out more brand elements.
No, it's interesting because I guess as well, it's like it's I don't know if you find it as well as a designer, but it's nice to kind of mix things up, right? In terms of especially if you're
Mm.
doing the same type of work every day, because UI, UX, and whether it's branding, it's all obviously under the umbrella of creativity, but it's all very different facets of the brain we have to kind of use. So it's quite interesting to sort of see the functionality of how you're kind of swiping through and showing how folks kind of engage with the designs, which is great.
Yeah, it's really fun to have different things you're working on because if you're working on, for instance, a website, a website can take a
Mm,
long time, if depending upon how many pages and the depths that you're going into it. But
mm,
being able to jump between brand identity work, campaign work, sometimes I'm making billboards, sometimes I'm making digital
mm.
ads. It keeps things fresh. It allows you
Mm.
to use different parts of your brain. And I think
Yes,
that makes work more fun, makes getting up in the morning more fun because you have new
of
things to
course.
look forward to. Yeah.
And we're in the creative industry, right? So it's got to be. I feel like it's we're being obviously biased, but it's got to be fun, right? What we do, and I can even see from the designs you're showing us the kind of various mock-ups and styles, and I feel like we'll definitely dive in, of course, into some maybe our programs and see what you've kind of worked on. But have you got kind of a favorite program that you tend to use on a date? I mean, I'm just going to guess Illustrator, but I could be wrong. But have you got a favorite program that you tend to kind of use, or even a program that you maybe are looking to forward to more, maybe using more of in the future?
Yeah, me and Illustrator, we're like this, man.
Your
We,
besties, yeah.
yeah, we're besties.
Go way back.
We go way back. But my first, and you'll appreciate this, my first
Go.
love is InDesign. That's my,
Hey, my
yeah,
guy.
I love, yeah, I love InDesign.
Okay.
And one thing that I'm trying to learn with the next bit of InDesign is data merging. So that's my next thing, is to get data
Okay.
merged like efficient to where it's like, okay, I got it,
Mm,
because I'm gonna be doing a lot of like card design and stuff, and I need to make things streamlined and stuff. And so
mm,
um always learning, always trying to grow. But those are my babies. Photoshop is right there. It's a third wheel in it,
mm.
but I very much, very much spent time in Photoshop. Um, and yeah, so those are the three ones. Those feel like my big ones.
Yeah, I
What,
know
what
we
about,
when we did our first stream, we kind of dabbled, didn't we, in the Illustrator? But sorry, what were you going to ask for?
I was gonna say, I know you love InDesign, but what's your number two?
What's my number two? Is it possible to have InDesign as like first, second, and third? Or is that a cheat? It's a cop out. That's a cop out, isn't it? To be fair, I feel like as well, maybe some other designers in the chat or people who just kind of dabble in design space can relate to this. But you find that you have a primary program that you use. So, for example, mine is InDesign, but you do dabble in, say, Illustrator, Photoshop, because the three kind of in sync with one another as well. You do
Hmm.
find you have to work in one, and then there's somewhere you bring it into another, and then you edit in Photoshop and so, which is the beauty, I think, of that idea of the various programs all kind of intersyncing with one another.
Hmm.
So to answer your question, InDesign is definitely first, but Illustrator, yeah, it's up there, man. It's fun. I don't know. It's just it feels more free to kind of work around and just play around. And I have a trackpad as well, iPad tablet, so it's kind of nice to kind of play around with that.
Yeah.
Um, which kind of goes into a nice sort of another question, which was, what's your setup? I'm always curious about designers, and
Mm.
again in the chat, let us know. What's your kind of? Are you a split screen kind of guy? Are you tableting? Are you matrix? What's your world,
Oh.
Chris? Tell us.
Well, I know my answer, but I'm curious what you mean by am I in the matrix? Am I what's the
Like like two screens and then an iPad and a laptop and a
okay.
desk. Like I'm talking like
Okay.
more
Oh
screens than
yeah.
the average person should have. You know.
Yeah, I'm Morbius in here, just got everything going around. No, I my setup is the same whether I'm working from home or if I'm at the
Mm.
office. And so when I say
Okay.
that, it's I have an iMac and then a standing desk, and I've got the same. So I've got the wireless keyboard,
Okay.
and then I have the wireless trackpad, and I have this mouse called the Razer Naga Epic. And I think I might have mentioned to you this
Wow. With
before.
a name like that, yeah. I
So
mean,
this has got
I'm afraid.
20 programmable buttons on it. It's a gaming mouse.
I was gonna
And
say, yeah, I got that vibe.
I'm not a gamer in that sense, but I'm telling everybody, I preach the Razer Naga gospel. Like it
There we
has
go.
streamlined my ability to do design in so many ways because it
Mm,
programs per, you can program it per program. So for Illustrator, number one, two, and three do something, and then in Photoshop they do something. And so I don't have to like I memorize my keyboard shortcuts, but
mm.
I don't have to physically use my hands to do them. I can use my thumb, you know.
Cool.
And so
Okay.
my right thumb is the only thing that I have to use for my keyboard shortcuts. My left hand's free for the trackpad and my keyboard. And
That's wild.
so I can be really efficient just in terms of,
Mm.
feeling balanced. I don't get like hand cramps anymore because I'm not like moving my fingers all around. So that's been a big proponent for me. If my mouse breaks, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know what will happen.
I don't know how I want to go on, and yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. But I
Yeah.
mean, folks, we always tend to forget, and it'd be great to know in the chat what people at home and your setups. But we forget how important the equipment that we use. Obviously, we got the programs, and it's there for us to create amazing work. But the
Mhm.
basics like the trackpads and the mouse and even a computer chair, like how much that will influence how productive we are and how comfortable we are, which is almost like sometimes a bit of a second thought. I don't know if that was a thing, but it sounds like, I mean, you've plugged that mouse pretty well. So I mean, I might have to put that on
Mhm.
my to-do list, which is great. But Chris, I was going to say, so perhaps maybe if we jump into perhaps a program and get a real feel for, I know obviously we can see obviously you've done some awesome stuff and designs. Maybe if you've got an example of a tip or a trick you want to show maybe for our lovely folks at home if they're keen to see.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll let you
Yeah,
lead away.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So this is a brand that we recently launched called Memphis Library Foundation, and they are needing a step and repeat, basically, of their logo and this tagline that we worked on. And so one thing that I need to do is they try to make it themselves and we deliver things for them, all the files packaged and everything. But sometimes it's like, hey, we need to get it a little bit more specific. And so something as simple as a step and repeat. They need to be
Mm,
scaled. It needs to be vector so that we can scale it up. It's supposed to be 8 feet by 8 feet. So I've just made a 4 feet by 4 feet thing here. And this is what they created, which was to scale. And you can tell that, it's pretty tiny because that's what it was before. Um,
Okay, fair. Okay, I thought my
and
eyes
so-
are really like super small, but
yeah. And so that's why they need us to recreate it. So I love
Mm,
libraries. I'm a big library guy. I think
nice.
that they are, you know, quintessential to uh getting going. So I want to
Mm,
make sure that all these files are not linked to artwork. So I'm going to open up those, pull this in, and this is the way they want it. I'm not doing anything creative here. This is just getting sort of a pattern down for them. And
mm,
so what I want to do is it's pretty crammed. And so when we clients make stuff, sometimes like spacing can kind of be like it's well spaced, but it's really, really busy. And so I want to kind
mm.
of slim it up for them a little bit. And so I'll use my mouse here just to do that, bring those over. And I love the align tools. These are probably my favorite things in general, just to kind of get things
Mm.
going. And
That was
so,
my next question actually. That is that one of your favorite tools? It's like maybe the tool we use the most, but is that one of your faves in Illustrator?
oh yeah, that's got to be up there in terms of just usefulness. It's
Mm,
it's so great. Um, and so then I want to get our tagline that we made here, bring that in, and again, just kind of making it a bit more spacious for them so it feels a bit more
mm,
intentional. And I'm not worried about making it too perfect in this sense, just because, just trying to get it easy for them. And so, cool.
mm.
I want to make these blue, so I'll grab the blue. They want that to be yellow.
Was that the distribute spacing you used as well that I noticed on a see that's one of
Yes.
my favorites. Like, yeah, it's just a cool one actually. It's almost like underrated a bit, but yeah.
Yeah, and so the cool thing about that is like I'm not even gonna worry about getting these like perfect in this thing. So I'm just using the Alt key, which is number 12 on my mouse.
Okay.
and
I love that.
and I'm using the Shift key. And
Mm,
so just to pull those down, and I want to make sure that these are equal in this whole thing. So I'm gonna group them, and then I'll make sure they're perfectly spaced in
mm.
this square, and then ungroup it. And since these are all grouped, now what I can do is just evenly distribute those and then make sure that they're all centered. And there we go. It's done.
Nice.
Now, I want to make sure that these are different colors. So just do that. And so I use the eyedropper tool just to grab that and make it same color. Oh, I think I messed that one up. That one's supposed to be yellow. There we go. And so that's that. So you can even something as simple as this, right? Like you can tell
Mm,
it's really crammed. And so
mm,
just making it a bit more simple. And so these are all kind of in a line. I don't really want those to be in a line. I want them to be a bit more spacious. So
mm,
ungroup that, ungroup these. And so this is a little bit of my day, which is seems kind of boring, but it's really fun when you develop the brand and you're kind of like in charge of making
mm.
sure that it's kind of going off without a hitch almost. Um,
No.
seeing clients use the stuff you make is really fun. So when you're doing your stuff with layout and everything, how often are you feeling like you have to kind of go behind the client and fix things? Because once you send the print, it's
Mm,
off and
mm.
running,
Yeah.
but do you have any freak out moments like that where you have to go behind them and make sure everything is good?
In terms of the layout, you mean the editorial layout or the style or?
Yeah, like the layout and everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? 'Cause when you, it'd be always cool to know what folks in the chat here think as well, especially if you're in the editorial space. When things go to print, it's almost like that's the final countdown, and that's it. Like there is no
Hmm.
turning back, basically, right? The big red button's been pushed. For me, it's quite important that we kind of do a few spread layouts, almost examples first, and also prove those before we start get going. So we'll kind of know what kind of route we're going to go down. That
Hmm.
answers your question. Yeah, but in terms of layouts, I mean, for consistency as well, a lot of it's consistency as well, because remember when it's editorial, you're talking, I don't know, 300-page hardback book. So
Yeah.
most likely the pages are relatively the same. So there seems to be a certain style. So it makes it a little bit easier. Once you get the first 50 pages done, the rest kind of follow.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, when you go to print, you just never know, right?
Right.
But I feel like it's interesting because you're obviously from the branding side of the world. I'm on the editorial side of the world, but we still have those kind of
Hmm.
relatable things, right? Going to print, working with clients, editorial. But on the topic of working with clients, which is nice because again, obviously today is all about getting to know you, your background, what you do in terms of dealing with clients and feedback, because that's something that's always a
Hmm.
tricky one. And I'm sure folks in the chat can even share some story. Obviously, keep it PG, of course. But there's always obviously we're going to say names because I wouldn't be professional. But there's always situations where it can be a bit tricky in terms of say getting, for example, bad feedback or feedback doesn't seem necessarily um, productive. How do you kind of deal with those kind of maybe criticisms when it comes from clients? Which is quite a difficult question, I know, but
No, no, no.
keen to
It's a
hear.
great question. I think learning to deal with feedback is important. Like you need to be able to understand that your idea isn't perfect just because you came up with it. And that
So
clients
true.
have good ideas too. And so things are your babies, but that doesn't mean that you can't tweak them to make them a little bit better and they can serve your client a little bit better as well. I have two really
Mm,
good kind of examples of things like that to play in it. So the first one is this
yeah.
brand for a butcher shop that we did called Buster's Butcher. Now, what they have is a butcher shop that they have first had an established brand of a wine and liquor store called Buster's. That's all it was. And so
Mm,
then they opened up a butcher shop. And so we worked on the logo and branding and for it and everything and came up with uh,
nice.
this wonderful slogan, every cut counts. And so we wanted to have something that obviously spoke into a butcher shop, but that was really professional looking, nice and clean. Um,
Mm,
and so we pitched two different concepts, and this is one of the concepts. This is what they ended up going with, obviously. But we had another concept that I really loved. I really thought was great. We as a team loved, and we loved this one too. But we thought that it was gonna. We basically had a bee that had a knife through it, um, and we thought that it was just a really great insignia.
mm,
It's kind of Busters and Butcher with a knife, but our client thought it felt a little bit too much emphasis on the knife scenario, and they
mm,
wanted it to kind of be more about the experience. They didn't want to just have a knife in it just because they're a butcher shop. And
mm,
so they chose this option, which I originally was kind of surprised because I thought the other option was so great that they obviously would pick it. And
mm.
so I was like, okay, cool. Well, let's roll with this. And then I love it now. I think it's great. And we made a couple tweaks. We really smoothed out the lettering here. Um, Added this nice shadow treatment to it. Came up with
Mm,
just the badge. And even though it's so simple, it really stands out in our market at least because uh, it's
nice.
not it's not over the top, and it's really simple. And so I got to make some cool custom little
Cool.
animal icons and stuff. And
Okay.
so it was fun making
Illustrator,
those.
I'm guessing. Illustrator stuff. Yeah, of
Me an
course.
illustrator. Here we go.
Of course. Just testing that theory, just making sure it was
Yeah.
there was
Oh
no
yeah.
there was no other programs involved, there's only
No.
Illustrator. I I
Mhm.
love the brand. And to be fair, I mean, even when you're scrolling through the branding, my brain straight away thought this would look nice on clothing. And I saw that obviously at the further down you have it on the t-shirt. And
Mhm.
I mean, I'd rock that if it was a leather jacket. I'm just saying, if you want to
Yeah.
make them into jackets, dude, there's a market for it. I'm willing to buy
Hey,
it.
hey, you never know.
We've got some great comments in the chat. We've got just going back to when you asked the question about the editorial and the print and testing. We've got our wonderful Izzy, who's also on Adobe Live often. Hazy, who said, "I always push to have a print test before and make them approve the print. And we've also got Barbara who's agreeing as well. And so is
Hmm.
Joshua as well. So like I feel like a lot of folks can relate to the idea of just maybe, doing a test. It's safer do a test. Sometimes they have to pay for it, but it's actually worth, right, making that. You don't
Yeah.
want to press the big red button and realize you've produced how many thousands and then small little mark,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, you
great.
gotta you gotta do that. You gotta go with the print test. I'm trying to find this is a good booklet that we had done called Vital, and getting that gloss right on the cover and
Mm,
making sure you have the right paper stock and the right binding. And so that print test is vital for what you're doing, especially when you've got bleed involved where images are going over the page.
mm,
Um,
mm.
you know, you could it's rare. I've seen rarely where you have shifting in a booklet type scenario, but sometimes it happens. So it's
Of course.
good to get that test in. Yeah, I love
Do
editorial
you
design.
it's funny because I mean, without getting too off piece, I'm working on something at the moment now whereby I had to get some stock examples from printers. But I know if you ever find is when you reach out to printers, maybe for some samples, they're so quick to give you some, and I love getting samples in the post. I don't know if you it's like a thing,
Hmm.
but right now I've got a desk full of samples and you have to kind of like plow through. It feels like Christmas again. But it's nice to kind of get those samples and to actually feel it in hand, right? Before you make that decision to lock in a stock. Do you tend to get samples for maybe when you're doing branding? If you're doing, say, clothing, do you maybe test things out roughly, or what's your kind of process when it comes to tests when it comes to branding?
Yeah, I think I'm quick to put things into a mock-up really
Mm,
quickly if I'm doing branding because I want to see if it feels right. I'm a big feelings guy. So I want to
mm,
see if the brand feels right on an article of clothing or a really applicable image, especially if it's
mm,
like an icon. For instance, like this Overton Park 9. This is a golf course here in Memphis
mm.
that we got to rebrand, and it's in the middle of like this one of our coolest urban parks, right? And
Okay.
did this squirrel with a nine tail and a flag in it, and like it's become
Cool.
really
Yeah.
popular. And so the first thing that I did, I was actually at the beach when I sketched this out, and I sketched it, and I was like, all right, I got to get my computer, and I went back, and then I got my handy illustrator, and
Nice.
um and
With
I
the
put it
mouse?
on. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, of course, of
Of
course.
course.
Yeah, and I put it on this golf ball just to see how it felt, and I was like, okay, yeah, it
Mm,
feels right. And it's tweaked a little bit since then, but you know, in terms of branding, I'm quick to put on mock-up stuff. In terms of print and physical product, I'm very quick to do that as well. So one really cool project that we got to work on, I've had the chance to do a lot of whiskey packaging.
okay.
Um, and so we've got a couple clients. So this is a tequila client we just recently branded, which was great. And this
All
is
right.
our whiskey client that's been going strong for a few years and done a ton of
Okay.
labels with them. But for instance, with this one, this is some really high quality tequila, and we got through the whole packaging and help pick the
That's
bottle and
cool.
everything. And so the first thing that we did in terms of making the label design was getting a piece of paper, cutting it out, testing sizing, getting scotch tape and taping it to the bottle, seeing if we wanted, because what we did something somewhat different. We have
Mm,
a single label that wraps around, but it leaves the back end open. So
mm.
that way it's just
I
a
like that.
single thing instead of a front and back. And
Yeah.
so you've got to account for curvatures. You've got to make sure the height's right. This neck is kind of tapered. And so we had to make sure that that was curved correctly so that it would taper right. So very much in the avenue of printing out, and I still have the bottles with like water in it where testing out,
Okay.
yeah, if the label's gonna work. So,
Sure. I'm gonna take a stab in the dark and say, obviously, I imagine it was a great project. You got paid well. Did you get free samples to keep as well, like a
oh,
bottle
that's
of
the
whiskey
best
or rum for your
part.
troubles?
That's the best part. That's the best part.
Nice. My kind of clients. I can
Yeah.
see we've got a few folks who are loving your designs. By the way, we've got gonna go back to your golfing one, we had a
Hmm.
Cody said cute scroll logo as well, and we've got some fun. We've got
Oh,
Nick
appreciate it.
Longo who's just stepped in and said, "Great to see you back on the live stream again, Chris." From Nick.
Oh,
So
Nick, my guy, the GOAT,
yeah.
man, the GOAT
So
in
then
the chat.
he is the go. So then loves. And again, my friends on the chat, if you're YouTubing or Behancing, Behancing is that a word? Just made it up.
No,
It's a
it
word now.
works.
Get
Yeah.
those comments in the chat, and I'll make sure I'll share them with Chris. You mentioned before, you said you were on the beach when you got the idea for when you were designing something. It's like you're reading my notes because actually one of my questions I wanted to ask you, and again, love to know what everyone thinks in the chat, but when you those ideas, when you're getting a creative block, do you have to sort of step away from the screen and go somewhere like a beach or somewhere, I don't know, like town or gallery, if you're lucky enough to live near the beach, that is. But do you have to find yourself going to places to try and get inspired? Like, what's your method?
Yeah, I definitely do. I have those built into my life as much as possible. Ways to get inspired outside of just looking at other people's work and hoping that I, get so inspired that I can figure it out. But my biggest thing is soccer. Soccer is like my biggest outlet. And so I played in college. I still love doing soccer branding for people. And so if you Google soccer branding, I'm like the number one Google search result. uh
Serious? Okay,
yeah, it's kind of crazy.
that's
Yeah,
sick, dude.
creative punch is number one on soccer branding. So it's pretty cool. Um but yeah, I love playing soccer. This is my old site, but I
Nice.
love basically every week I play 2 or 3 times a week. And so I've got a game
Mm,
tonight. And that is my creative block, just
nice.
breakdowner. Like I feel the most comfortable when I'm playing soccer. I feel like that's what I was made
Mm,
to do. And so when I'm on the field and I leave the
mm.
field afterwards, I'm like, man, I just feel so inspired. I always stay up late the nights of games because I'm just like got my creativity's just like flowing. And
Love that.
so,
Love that.
that's a big one for me.
Mm,
Um, Board games has become a new avenue for me for creativity as well. So playing board games, stepping out of like a designer in terms of visual mindset and thinking about challenging your brain in a puzzly way, that
mm,
gets me really creative. Like I start figuring out, oh, how did they make these pieces do this? And how did you interact with this? It just gets your mind working in new ways. And so
mm.
I think it's important that as creatives, we have outlets to just express ourselves that isn't filled with pressure, something
I
that we
get
just
that.
love to do. And it could be
Mm.
anything, just that you love to do. And afterwards you feel inspired by it. That's kind of one of my things that I like to tell people to do.
Do you know what as well? I'd love as well. Like you're like a typical design, and a good thing, by the way, a good way, because as designers, we do other things sometimes that's not necessarily creative, but we still bring it back to being creative because it's almost like it's in our blood, right? It's in our genes, is
Yeah.
how we're kind of programmed. And I love that you're able to channel your energy into something else, and then it kind of comes back into what you love to do. We've got some folks here honing in on soccer, and obviously, I had a feeling this would come up because I remember when we had our stream. And I
Hmm.
know for anyone who's seen a previous stream that myself and Chris have done, we've spoke about football, soccer, tomato, tomato, potato,
Yeah,
potato.
yeah.
And we've got a question from Patrick who said, "What's your favorite team? Football team or soccer team, depending on which island."
Patrick, my guy. My favorite team is Tottenham Hotspur, which I know will
Why
come
did you?
as a disappointment to you.
Not me personally, just maybe someone else in the chat who's also an Arsenal fan. I've had just. I love that. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah, I
Okay.
love I love Spurs, I love them. I love MLS, honestly. That's my favorite, like the league itself, because
Okay.
I grew up where we didn't even have TV for like a couple years, and so I had recorded on VHS. I have at home
VHS.
like tons and stacks of VHS games of MLS games. And so I watched MLS recordings for like a year and a half. That's all I would watch because we didn't
Wow.
have cable.
Okay.
And so
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I now like love the league, and that's my number one. Spurs is
Okay.
right there, but it's
It's
cool.
going so
I
well.
Yeah, I know, right? The chat was yeah, our stream was going great.
Nah,
Um,
it's all good.
it's
It's all
cool.
good.
So I'm from a small town in Mississippi, and
Mm,
one of the players from Mississippi, Justin Mapp, went pro, and he was one of the few at first. We have a few now from Mississippi that went pro, but he was the first, and he went to my high school and stuff. So I always looked up to him as a kid, like, oh man, Justin Mapp. And so when I got older, um, he actually reached out, and I got to do his professional branding for him, you know.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so this is right here. This is his logo, Justin Map Soccer, which he's for his professional training and everything. So that
Mm.
was a really cool full circle moment of like getting to combine your passion with something that helped inspire you as a kid and everything. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it's cool when you get to do a little bit of both.
I mean, that's got to be the dream, right? When you're in a space where, especially, if you're freelance or maybe you're full time, but in that space where you love what you do, and then you're able to channel that into something that is also passion, like you said, soccer, and then you're into this space and you're doing branding. It's a great thing to see because also it's work, but maybe it doesn't feel like work because you're having fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you ever found, was that something that and which is actually one of my next questions, which is, your kind of dream client to work. I don't know whether that was your dream client or maybe one in the future. Do you have a dream client on the basis of obviously, enjoyment of the type of work that you do?
Yeah, my dream client is, I think, two things. One, I would love to do a sports team logo, specifically soccer, but really any team. I've done a
Yeah.
lot of clubs, and that's one of the coolest honors is to see kids wearing your jersey.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Okay.
just so cool. It's almost cooler than a professional team
Mm,
because you know the impact that a club or like a youth program has on a kid and like the camaraderie around that, and like parents have it on their car and everything. Like it's just kind of this low key deep thing, you know. So
mm.
I really like that, but a professional sports team be one, and the second one is to do something with Marvel or Spider Man. I am the biggest Spider Man
Oh,
fan on the
snap.
planet, so
Yes.
that would be that would be great. I did some fan art of Spider Man and Marvel because I make board games. It's like one of my other things that I do.
Mm.
And see if this will, maybe it's not loading up here. Um, I don't know.
I
See
feel
if
like that
that.
was one of our very first streams. We did actually a bit of board game design, which I always remember our streams. One of our first ones was
Yeah.
where you were designing your own board game, and I was obsessed with it.
Hmm.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. And so this is that. I know that that game's about to release actually.
Yeah.
Um,
Nice.
but this is some illustration work I did as a just a side love as a
Nice.
gift for a friend, and so I love drawing minimalist characters and like kind of doing all that. And so this has like 500 illustrations of Marvel in it. It's crazy. Yeah, like all the
Love that.
different characters, and it's a full game and everything. And so
That's
I would
awesome, dude.
I would love to do that. And that this is something that you don't get paid for. You just
Mm,
make yourself. But man, this opened up a whole new wave of creativity for me. One of my good
mm.
friends, Patrick Weber, one of the most talented people on the planet that I know, and just a most talented illustrator that I know. He was with me when I was working on this, and he seeing how good at illustration he was, I was like, okay, I want to try my hand at doing more illustration and character art. And so we've played this game together and everything, and so it's pretty cool uh,
That is
to
awesome.
to have it all done. So yeah, like I said, I'm a big Spider-Man guy.
I love as well, like when you mentioned, and this is maybe one for those in the chat who maybe necessarily, if they're not in the design space, but they're trying to get into, say, for example, the design space. The fact that you're mentioning that you did this as something that wasn't paid and it was a side hustle, but you loved it and you enjoyed it and you shared it more importantly on a platform like Behance. I think that's amazing. And I was actually watching, obviously we do these Adobe Spotlights quite often, and we had a very cool designer, Aaron Draplin, which I'm sure some of you folks know, who
Mhm.
mentioned about the idea of, we've all got to pay bills, we've all got to do what we've got to do to make a living. But if there's a period where, say, I don't know, you're binge watching Netflix, which is totally fine, by the way, maybe use that energy and translate it into something that you want to be doing, i.e., a side hustle or side job, and then actually you're actually utilizing your time wisely. Um, so yeah, it's just kind of touching back on what you were showing us just now, and it's great to sort of see those sort of side hustles come to light because the client ones are important. Like, let's be
Mhm.
honest, obviously it pays the bills, but it's still nice to keep yourself sane and tap into things that you don't necessarily always get a chance to do.
Yeah, no, you gotta, I mean, I'm not say you gotta do anything. For me, I'm a very much entrepreneur mindset. And so my things that I get passionate about, I instantly try to make them into businesses, not necessarily to make money all the time, just because it
Mm,
gives me a goal to achieve. It gives me something that I can accomplish for myself. And so I love the idea of turning things that you're passionate about into something that's shareable. And then if
mm,
it financially becomes something that's viable, that's fantastic. But if you start it with the premise of just like, I love this, I want to share this with people, and I want to bring some good positive energy into the world, I think you're going to do really, really well, and
I
succeed.
love that.
And you'll succeed much easier because your bar is not going to be like, hey, I need to make $1 million off of this. It's just like I just want to do
Mm,
this, and it becomes fun. And that kind of
mm.
worked with the board game thing. So this is
Yeah.
um I'm not trying to plug sales or anything. I'm just trying to show you a little bit more of the
Plug it,
illustration.
man. Plug it. Plug it.
Nah,
It's a beautiful project.
this is my game that's releasing soon, and this is just kind of I want to show like the journey from like starting my own thing, Creative Punch, doing it alone, bringing on a business partner, like just stepping out. All I had was one video client. I didn't even have a branding client when I went full time into branding. So you don't always have to come in and be like say that you have to have a ton of clients. You just have to be willing to try really hard and to give it a
Mm,
shot and be willing to take a chance on yourself. And also, have a little bit of connections and people that can help you. And so, and you want to make smart decisions. So, like, I go from starting that company, having some success, merging with another company. So, two Black businesses merging together, which, like, in the marketing world, there's not a ton of
mm.
Black owned agencies that are around that do branding specifically. And so, for us, that was a big deal. And so, starting that and working together in that, and then starting another company. And I just feel really proud of the ability to constantly be growing and constantly be learning. And so if you would have told me I could design a card game or a board game years
Mm.
ago, I would be completely shocked. But I also know that like if I'm willing to give myself the tools to do it, that you can accomplish things. So,
I
you
love
know.
that. And to be honest, it's been an absolute, I'm not just saying that, generally mean it. Like seeing, I think our very first stream, maybe 2 years ago, perhaps,
Hmm.
possibly, up until now, and we had one early this year as well, is I'm seeing the progress from when you first kind of started. And obviously, I follow you on social. So it's lovely to sort of see, creatives, because we're in different parts of the world as well. So, we don't get a chance to grab a
Yeah.
coffee and meet up, but I'm seeing it,
Yeah.
online, the process of how you're kind of going about yourself. And got a
Hmm.
lovely comment from Izzy in the chat, which I think kind of sums up exactly kind of what you do as well. He said, "I love to hear the entrepreneurial passion in creators. We need it to thrive, and it's hard to be in that mindset, which is can be tricky, right, in the market today, for sure."
Yeah, it's very hard to feel like, you're able to continue pursuing something, especially if it's really difficult financially.
Mm,
And entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Not saying that it's elitist or anything. It's just it's a different kind of mindset, and so you can still really be you can still have that mindset and work in-house or work at a corporate job. Like you can still have it. I started a pillow sewing business, so I would take t-shirts and I'd sew them into pillows, like hand sew them into pillows when I was working at a corporate branding or a corporate kind of marketing job where I was all day that I did was make sales sheets and
okay.
big, huge pamphlets. But I wanted something to really express my creativity. So I started this business, did my own logo, made my website, started doing festivals and stuff, and created a little side business that I didn't ever spend any money in marketing, but I made money
Mm,
just by doing it. And I would get pictures of people holding their pillows and be like, this was my mom's shirt that passed away. That was awesome. And like, that's a creative avenue. And so you don't have to always do the branding thing. You can explore, water the other seeds in your life that
mm,
um, are that you have a passion about and see where they lead. It might be something really special. And it doesn't have to be forever. It can be a few years or a month.
mm.
Like it can be something simple.
I love these gems that you're throwing at us, man. It's great. And we're kind of coming up to that sort of funnel for 10 minutes, but I want to make sure that because there's a lot of questions coming in the chat.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I've also got some questions as well. I want to make sure that we get them in before we shut up shop because there's a lot of awesome content you're giving us. We've got Keys who said, Chris, have you ever done something for a client that is outside of the US?
I have. I've done work for a client in the UK actually.
Hey, my neck of the woods.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I worked with some folks that used to play for Hull City
Okay.
and some other players, former Premiership players that started a soccer tourism group. So I did their website and have done a little bit of branding for them. Um, Done a little bit of illustration work for some people overseas.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's fun doing some international work, but getting that money over here is a little bit more tricky. So make sure you get ducks
Oh
in a row
yes.
when you
I
start
love that
working on it.
you went down that route. That's a whole different stream in itself, right? It's like,
Woo!
have we got another hour to discuss the yeah, no,
Yeah.
I know what you mean. And also people forget, and maybe some folks in the chat can relate to this. Time difference is a big thing. Like it sounds
Mhm.
like it's not, but when you have those Zoom chats, because obviously you can't meet up for a coffee, you're gonna have to get, have a full day of work, freshen up, have a shower, and then jump on a Zoom call. It takes a lot of energy, but then obviously it's the opportunity to work with folks abroad, which is also a beautiful thing.
Mhm.
Chris, as we got to that kind of last 10 minute stage, and I feel like you touched some really nice points. There was one question I was dying to ask you, um, which was basically reflecting on your career journey as a whole so far, which we've kind of seen and you've spoken about. Um, what would you consider to be some of the most significant milestones or achievements that have shaped your growth and success as a designer?
Yeah, so I've got a few of those. The first one, and I don't have a visual of this, but it was my senior year in high school. This actually got me going into the industry, was I played soccer with one of my closest friends, and he and his sister passed in a car accident. And our senior year, when we were supposed to win the state and everything like that, be the best team or whatever. So we had this big, huge impactful moment. And what I wanted to do was kind of honor our friendship and everybody in that. And so I created this kind of scrimmage between two college teams, and we raised money and raised a bunch of money to help one of my teammates from Africa, like kind of go to college, gave him a scholarship. But
Wow.
that was the first time that I made a poster. It was the first time I made a logo, and I still have it. I wish I had it hanging up here, but like I made jerseys and everything, and like got on the news and all this stuff as a high school kid. And that was one of the biggest milestones of my life, just because I saw something and I accomplished it, and I like was using Microsoft Paint to do this. It was crazy. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, it was wild. So that was a big one, but that got me
That's
into the
beautiful.
industry, and so something that was tragic helped me to shape what I am today and who I am today. Um, Another big one was creating the Beale Street sign. I was kind of on this project earlier, but this is the archway for the most iconic street in our state, possibly one of the most iconic streets in the world for sure, Beale
Mm.
Street, home of the blues. And so getting to design this archway, it's been seen probably a billion times in person and digitally at this point. It'll be there when I'm gone. And, it's pretty cool because people don't believe me when I tell them I made it. you
No, we
know,
believe you, man. Because yeah,
yeah. It's
I
just
love
kind of
that.
funny. Yeah. So those are some
That's
big
very
ones.
cool.
Yeah, those are some big
Yeah.
ones.
But that first story you said, I think that I mean that kind of hits home, right? Because it feels like something that will stay with you forever. I mean, clearly it has, but just you sharing that, I mean, I definitely appreciate you sharing that because it's close to home, right? It's very close to
Hmm.
home. So and it's kind of made you who you are today as a designer. So that's a beautiful kind of way to kind of wrap up, really. I mean, well, actually, on a funnel note, and I know
Hmm.
you've been showing some amazing work, and the chat has been popping off, and everyone's been really indulged in it. Have you got any final words of wisdom for our viewers who maybe are just starting out in the journey, looking to become designers, and maybe those who may be in it but just struggling? Have you got any kind of words and wisdom that you can bestow upon us?
Yeah, I'd say one, keep punching. That to go back to that. Don't be scared to take risks. Bet on yourself. Make wise decisions, for your future financially and everything like that. But if you want to be in this industry, I think you really got to be willing to take risks in whatever way you're comfortable. So I know risk and
Mm.
comfort kind of are two different things, but if you're not that outgoing, then instead maybe go with someone to try to get some work at a nonprofit. Try to do some free work to get your foot in the door. So that way you
Mm.
then only have to communicate through email after that. Uh,
Yeah.
so like find ways to get around things that you're not so good at so that way you can do what you're really good at. Um,
Mm.
and then don't be scared to try new things. So if you feel like you really want to be in animation or illustration, but you haven't really had a chance to do it yet, do it on your own.
Mm.
Don't set the bar at this has to be something that gets 1 billion likes or goes viral. There's so many projects just are in my cabinet that never see the light of day because they're not for anyone else, they're for me. And
Mm.
that's really healthy, I think, is to do stuff, prioritize yourself, prioritize your needs, the people around you, do stuff for your friends,
Mm.
um, find ways to be creative that is less pressure filled. And then I think that'll help you in the pressure filled moments.
I love that. It takes a certain mindset as well, isn't it, to be able to kind of maybe switch off and just do things for the fun of it. Because I don't know if you find this, but since maybe graduating from uni and then you're in the world of work, things become a little bit serious. I mean, it is serious, right? You got to make a living, you got to live and survive. You've got families and whatnot. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's still elements of you do things for fun, right? Our industry it's supposed to be fun. They're supposed to enjoy it. So kind of tapping back into this kind of like childlike characteristics of just doing things for the fun of it is very, very important. And then again, I'd be terrible host not to mention it, but even tapping in on, streams like these, watching it, fulfilling yourself in, being inspired, podcasts, any sort of things that you're watching or that you podcasts or events you've been to, things that kind of feed into that creative soul of yours. Besides Adobe Live, obviously, right?
Yeah, yeah. I
They're
mean,
smooth.
yeah, smooth transition, real
I learned
smooth.
from you, dude.
Yeah, yeah. I do actually watch a lot of Adobe Live.
I
I,
love
I watch a
that.
lot of Adobe Live. I listen to Nick Longo's podcast. I listen to that. I listen
So,
to a lot of different things. I kind of took a break from listening and started just meeting with people and hearing their stories more. So like going and just talking to creatives in our community. Um,
mm,
that's been big for me recently because I used to do a lot of like, oh, I got to absorb as much content as possible. And I kind of got really full. And so, um, yeah, I think those are great. Skillshare is a great um, way to learn new skills. YouTube obviously is fantastic, but I think
mm,
that there's something special about just saying to a friend, hey, do you want to go meet up and talk about stuff, talk about design, talk about, the new landscape of design. Can
mm,
we collab on a project? Like, can you help me with this? That stuff is just so invaluable, getting another person's opinion that's like kind of can speak your language. And so um find different communities where you can do that. I think that's gonna
mm.
really help. So that's what I do most of the time.
I think as well. I mean, you did the keyword, excuse me, that I got from what you said as well is collab, because I feel
Hmm.
like, especially maybe, if we cast our minds back a few years back, pandemic and being able to, everyone kind of being stuck indoors and not be able to reach out to folks. Now, it feels like a thing of the past now. Now we can reach out. It's that ability to maybe tap into folks who have other skill sets that maybe complement yours, and then you work on things together. Which, I mean, I don't know if you get a chance to maybe give talks at schools or unis, but I've seen a few talks, and I mean, I've given a few talks where you kind of really hone in on that, especially for graduates, touching on collaboration and working with folks in other fields to create something, you know, of impact
Hmm.
for your community.
Yeah, yeah. I was just at a student mixer last week with our agency. I love meeting new students and seeing their passion and because so many people are way ahead of where I was at their age. Like I didn't go to school for art, I didn't go to school for branding, I didn't go to school for this. I went to school for journalism. And then when I graduated,
Okay.
I saw that you could do graphic design and I decided okay, I guess I'll do that. I had a degree in journalism and I said, I'm just going to do graphic design. And I taught myself how to do all this. So, you can do anything you set your mind to. I truly believe that.
Nice. Well, that's a beautiful way to kind of end this stream. So Chris, I mean, it's been an absolute it's always a pleasure, dude. It goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. It's been an absolute pleasure to host you, and I can see on the chat everyone's been loving it. So On that note, I hope you're feeling pumped, refreshed, inspired to kind of go out and do your own things. On a final note, and talk about inspiration, stay tuned for the 3D typography with Corey Allen Hall. And there you can learn how to create some three-dimensional typography in Adobe Illustrator, Chris's favorite program.
Yeah.
So until the next time, my folks, keep designing, stay safe, and hopefully see you on the next Adobe Live very, very soon. Ciao, ciao.
See y'all.